You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 249. What happens if I don't get over my ex? Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful Bravehearts. I am so excited. Today we have a special guest, Summer, coming on. And I just wanted to do a quick intro because I think this is a really important topic to talk about because many of you listening are afraid that you're never going to get over your ex, which is a totally, it makes sense why our brain wants to go there. I totally get it. We totally feel you, and you're not the only one. So we wanted to talk about today, what happens if I don't get over my ex? And we're going to talk about a lot of different topics. But something that I find so fascinating that Summer represents in this episode so well is a lot of times when we start the journey to getting over your ex, and specifically for her, she's done the Get Over Your Ex program. And when she started that, of course, we look at goals, we define what we think getting over your ex means. And I've seen it happen a lot of times where Bravehearts think getting over their ex means one thing, and by the end of the program, they realize it's something completely different and it's even more profound than they ever realized. So that's what we're going to talk about throughout this episode. I'm really excited for you to take a listen, and I will just kick off the episode. We're going to talk a lot about many different topics today with Summer, but I want to just go ahead, dive right in. And why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, Summer? So where you are, who you are, tell us a little bit about your breakup journey, what led you to kind of the beginning of your journey.
Yeah. So my name is Summer. I am 34. I live in Denver, Colorado right now, originally from Escondido, California. But if people don't know where Escondido is, it's right outside of San Diego. So yeah, definitely a beach girl and now becoming a mountain girl. Just kidding. I actually don't like hiking, but anyway, so pretty much my breakup story started in January of this year. So we are right now in May. So it's been 4 months since it's happened. And the person that I was dating, so my ex, him and I had been dating for just about 2.5 years. And we had broken up once before. And then when we got back together, we actually ended up running into each other at a Red Rocks concert, which anyone being from Colorado would know that like you can't even run into people you want to at a Red Rocks concert, let alone running into an ex that you had a really, tragic breakup with. So fast forward, we got back together. And then in a very sad twist of fate, we ended up breaking up again in almost the exact same way that we had broken up in the first place. And that just took me down a bad spiral. Like I was like in the depths of it. I've been telling my friends, I'm like, I don't even feel like I knew what love was or what heartbreak was before this person. And I had been married and divorced, and I was like, how is this so much more painful? And so I did all the things like you talk about, like when you're going through a breakup. So was like, I want to like make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I don't want to do what I did last breakup where I just, got more involved with just crying every day. I would be like drinking more, partying more. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do this the right way. And so I started, working out more, just being more healthy and more mindful about what I was eating, making sure that I was like dedicating time to like close friendships, journaling, all the things, right? But then like nothing seemed to be working. And so I was just like, I'm desperate. Like I need to like figure something else out. And then I came across your podcast. And so I did what a lot of your other Bravehearts do. I like binged it. I was listening to it every day. And then just the further and further I got along and like the worse things became for me, where I was like, nothing seems to be working. I was like, I have to sign up. Like, I don't know what else to do. I cannot keep living in this much pain. And so, yeah, then I ended up signing up for your program, and which I actually call breakup school because I think that's like more fun is to call it breakup school instead of the program. But so yeah, here I am now.
I love that school. I mean, it is really like a course, so it makes a lot of sense. A lot of
Yeah.
different levels. Amazing. Okay, so let's talk about your breakup more. I am so curious because you mentioned I don't think I know what heartbreak was until this experience, and how interesting, right? That you've experienced, like you've been married, you've gone through a divorce before, and that didn't feel as heartbreaking as this experience. So, why don't you just kind of share with us what were some of your bigger struggles that you were really having a hard time with when it came to getting over your ex and or building your bigger and better life?
Yeah. So I think for me, previously in my dating history and even with my marriage, like I had been in compatible relationships, or at least what I thought were, compatible relationships at the time. And any type of breakup I would have, or even like with my divorce, there was always like a very logical reason for me to see why it didn't work out. So if it was like, well, we didn't really like a lot of the same things, or we weren't really into the same type of music, or he was more of a homebody and I was a little bit more outgoing, or there would just be all these things that I could like tangibly see and logically connect as to being like, yep, that didn't quite align, even though we had a good time. And I always just had the easiest time just like jumping right back into dating, because to me it was just kind of like, okay, cool, I got to see now like what worked, what didn't work. I'm ready to, see what else is out there. My person is still out there. But with my recent ex, I know we talked about this when I was in the program, but like I had never felt such a deep connection with someone where it was like an energetic pull that from the very beginning and all throughout our relationship, I mean, I just felt like we had a soul connection. And to me, that was something that I had never felt before. And so then when I said that I didn't know what love was, or I didn't know what heartbreak was, that was why, where I was like, it took me 32 years to find this person initially. Like, how on earth would I ever be able to find something this special again with someone that, you know, precedes, or that's not the right word, but like that goes past the tangible things that I'm so used to looking at, and then being able to decide, yep, that's why it didn't work out. This one was more like this is bigger than that, and more energetic and soulful. And so yeah.
I'm so glad you're talking about this because there's going to be so many people who resonate with that. It's almost like like you could logic your way out of these relationships in the past that have ended, and you have logical reasons as to why these things ended. But then this one, it's like the logic wasn't as clear or the logic wasn't there. And
Mhm.
how do you release a relationship that was seemingly ideal and seemingly everything that you wanted, right? Um, so tell us kind of where was your turning point or what big aha did you have to get to where you are now today? Tell us where you are today. So how did you
Yeah.
kind of overcome that? Because I know there's gonna be a lot of people who are resonating with you right now. So I want you to kind of show them, okay, here's where I am today with this, and here's how I got there. So give them kind of that journey so that maybe they can have the same experience.
Yeah. Okay, I'm so glad you asked me this, because it's so interesting to me that one, you would even ask me to be on your podcast for this reason, because when I was going through the program, I, as you talk about, like we all have our goals, right? That we set throughout. Like we have our goals that we set at the beginning, and that can be what we measure as we go along to see if we're making progress. And so For me, I guess it's probably good that I start from the biggest aha and then go backwards because I think that'll make a lot more sense. So for me, it was like I was so focused on the goal. I am going to get over my ex. I'm going to get over my ex. I'm going to get over my ex. And then as I'm going through the program, I'm realizing these goals that I had set for myself, I'm not quite there. I'm not quite there. I'm not quite there. And I'm working harder and harder and harder. Then there was even a time 2 weeks before I graduate, and I say to you, like I put into the portal, like, Dorothy, I am so struggling. I'm going to be graduating here in 2 weeks. I'm not where I want to be. And like, I think maybe I need to go back to pillar one. I think I just need to do like more work. And you're like, what's wrong with having all of these emotions? And then you also said, like, you're not graduated yet, like, give it time. And at first I was like, I mean, if I'm not there yet, what is going to guarantee that I'm going to get there by graduation? Like, come on, like, stop being so positive with this. So, and then this was the craziest part. So when we do our final check-ins with you and we say where we're at on the scale of all the goals that we have created for ourselves, one of the one of the goals I had set for myself at the beginning of the program was excitement around dating and being able to gauge that. Because, like I said previously, I've always had that excitement. So I was like, okay, if I know if I can feel that excitement for dating again, I'll know that will have gotten, over my ex. And so when it came time for the check in and I started writing what it was for that goal, at the beginning it was like 0% and I wanted to be at 40, and I was honest and I was like, oh my gosh, I failed. I'm not at 40. I'm barely, at like 10, maybe, like maybe not even that. And I was like, well, I'm just going to be honest with Dorothy. And I was like, I didn't meet this goal, but I was like, but something really interesting that happened was that I'm actually really enjoying the relationship I'm building with myself. And I'm loving that. And I'd really like to pursue that before even jumping back into dating, which I'm like, to me, actually, I feel that the outcome was better than the goal that I set for myself. And when I'm saying this, by the way, to you, Dorothy, because I see you smiling, I'm like, when I wrote that out, I'm thinking, oh, I failed because I didn't meet my goal. But I'm being honest and being like, hey, well, I did get this really great relationship with myself, and I'm really enjoying that. And so then the biggest aha moment, I kid you not, was when you were like, Summer, hello. That is the best thing you could ever ask out of this. And then I was like, oh, holy shit. Oh my God, you're right. Like, here I am so hyper focused on my goals. I did not realize how much growth and how much good came out of this, that I'm not even like recognizing it, even when I'm saying it to you in my final check-in. So that was
Isn't
my
it
biggest aha. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy though? Like it legitimately, it's so wild. And I feel like, so the purpose of these goals, everyone, just so you're clear, the individuals who are listening, I think it's important to set goals with timelines. And it doesn't mean, I think when you add a timeline, it creates pressure. So there's like pros and cons to this. But when you add a timeline, it brings up all of your shit. And so Summer kept seeing all of her shit. Like all of it was just coming to the surface, coming to the surface, coming to the surface. All of her feelings of not feeling like enough or good enough because she's not meeting her goals. It's just, that is the point. That is the
Mhm.
point of getting like on board with yourself when you aren't meeting expectations. And of course, I want everyone to hit their goals. And I know that Summer will, if she hasn't already, hit a lot of her goals. She has multiple goals. I think sleeping was one of them, which was like beautiful and amazing. And that was the other thing too that I think you realized in your final check-in is like, wow, I've hit all of these other things. I've done
Mhm.
so much, but because we're hyper fixated on what's going wrong, we
Mhm.
don't allow ourselves to understand and see what's going right. And so, what was cool about your final check in and why I even brought you on this podcast, because I think it's so important, is just recognizing how important that relationship with yourself is. Because a lot of times you come into the program thinking, here are the outcomes that I want to go after, but through the journey, you realize there's something deeper and there's something better that you're building and growing. Um, and of course, people hit goals and stuff on along the way, but it's also like you start morphing into this new person. I don't know how else to put this, Summer. So if you can say it in a better way, I'm so open. But you start morphing into this new version of yourself who has your own back, regardless of goals or circumstances or what's going on in your life. You have your own back. And it's kind of fascinating, actually, that we're recording today because I've been going, I'm cleaning my office and I've had this huge bag that is literally like breaking. It was falling apart because it had all of these files in it and mail and stuff that I needed to like file and put away. It's been there for like, you guys, I kid you not, like 3 years, maybe 4 years now, since 2020. And I'm going through this and I find a letter. Like I find a letter, it's addressed to Breakup Coach Dorothy. There's crayons and colored pencils, and it says 2019 on it. And it has my address on it, and it's closed. And I'm like, it's weird. What is this? And it's from 2019. And I open it up, and it's a letter from myself that a different coach had told me to write and mail to myself that I did, that I never opened. So here I am in 2024, and I open this letter, and it's all about Dorothy, I fucking love you. Like, no matter what you've accomplished or not accomplished yet, or the circumstances that you have, the results that you have, here are all the goals that we've been working towards. But even if you don't have them, I am so fucking in love with you. Like, thank you so much for going after these things, even when it's been difficult. And that to me is priceless. Do you know what I mean? And I
Oh
feel
my
like
gosh. Yeah.
that's what you built in your pursuit of these goals.
Oh my gosh, yeah. First of all, that gave me goosebumps, literal goosebumps when you said that, because I'm like, oh, that is so sweet. And that's exactly it. And you kept saying to the entire time, like, Summer, it's going to happen in a moment. And then I even said in like one of my check-ins with you where I was like, man, I keep thinking I'm having my aha moment, but then I'm like, oh, yep, there's my aha, but nope, never mind. No, it's not. I came down again and oh, no, this is it. Nope, that's not it. So when I did have it was when you pointed it out of something so incredible that I built with myself, but that I wasn't even recognizing. And then everything, it was almost like one of those movies, or like Raven, like Raven from That's So Raven, like where the future like goes, like zooms in.
Such
That's
a
what it felt like
flashback. I love
happened,
that.
right?
Mhm.
Millennial
Yes.
reference, right?
Yes. Hmm.
But it was crazy because then it's like, then I started looking back and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. Okay. So there were these building blocks that, again, I wasn't even looking at because I was so hyper focused on these certain goals or about it all, quote unquote, getting over my ex. So then when I looked back, I was like, okay, I did have some aha moments. So, like, one of them was where I had told you like there was this when we did our dares, the week of dares, and I had the like one where it was like I'm going to ask for a 2-for-1 drink special, and I did it and they said no. And then I was telling my friend Stephanie, who I was out to dinner with, about like all the dares I was doing during the week, mentioned the 2-for-1. And then as we were having like drinks together and we order our second drink, the waitress comes over and is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot to put in your drink. This one's on me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got for my 2-for-1 after all. And then we just like keep like laughing and drinking. And then we order our third and final drink of the night. And the waitress comes back over again and is like, oh my gosh, I'm such a klutz. I cannot believe I did this. I forgot to put this drink in. This one is on me too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we got 3-for-1 instead of 2-for-1. And so I actually saved this on my phone because I thought it was like worth saying. But so my friend Stephanie texts me when we get home that night, and she said, when you asked life for a 2-for-1 drink, it said no. When you least expected it, 3-for-1 is what you got. Lesson: be open to what seems like a no actually being a yes to more. And I was like, okay, again, mind blown about that. Like, here's life again teaching me a lesson, like in real time to look for that. So then I thought back on that instance. And then I think the other big thing for me too was when you talk about external validation and how that's not a thing, and you go into what you mean by that. I don't want to butcher what you say because you say it so beautifully, but that to me, I think was like probably one of the biggest eye opening things of my life. And then I realized was kind of almost the starting pillar of me starting to build this relationship with myself, is because when you said that external validation is not a thing and we can actually self validate ourselves, because it really depends on what we're feeling about ourselves when the words are said. That I think was just like the base block I had been missing with a relationship with myself that I've never built. I've always put my validation on what other people think about me or say about me. And in any capacity, whether it be like, a coworker or as like an acquaintance or a friend of a friend, or, even just a person that I'm in a relationship with. And so I think learning that was what catapulted the rest of my building blocks for this relationship for myself, so much so that there had even been an instance, which again, didn't realize it until I'm looking back, but there had been an instance with a colleague of mine where there was a comment that was said like to me about me, a very negative comment. And I remember I even said, I was like, I feel like when you say that, it's like saying I have pink hair. And I'm like, I'm not going to just sit here and try to convince you that I have brown hair when everyone around can see I have brown hair. But I'm like, but if you want to think I have pink hair, that's okay. Like, you are welcome to think I have pink hair. I'm just not going to waste my time trying to convince you that I don't have pink hair. And so anyway, I know I'm rambling at this point, but it's like there was these like key points that came up when I had my aha moment, or I should say you gave me my aha moment, that I looked back and I'm like, oh my God, like I have had these incredible milestones that I was not even focusing on, because I just was like, yeah, I'm failing. Everyone else is doing better than me. Like everyone else is further along in their progress. And then, yeah, it's just incredible. I looking back and how that moment alone has now changed, and being like, no, holy shit, like I was so successful. Oh my gosh, my work was so successful. This is
I
great.
love it so much. You had so many aha moments too. I think let's talk about that for just a second because I just want for those of you who are listening and maybe you've been on this journey for a while, like maybe you've been really working on getting over your ex, building your bigger and better life, and you've had aha moments that feel like they don't stick, or you have a moment and you're like, oh my God, that was so mind blowing and that was so perfect for me. And then a new thing comes up and you're struggling with that new thing. Please know that all of that is leading you to being over your ex and building your bigger and better life. All of that is a part of the process. All of that is welcomed and amazing. And you've got to start celebrating it along the way. I don't know if I talked about this in a podcast yet, but I've been talking about it a lot inside of this kind of specific cohort of the Get Over Your Ex program around celebrating. We have been waiting to get to the end of the race to celebrate, like the finish line. We have to cross the finish line before we can celebrate and say we've accomplished something or done something. When in reality, if you notice in a marathon or in any races, I'm actually not around a lot of runners, but I've just seen it on TV, right? Um, it looks like people are cheering them on like along the way. Like they've got people on the sides of the street cheering them on. You think about the Boston Marathon, there's a lot of people there cheering them on, celebrating them before they've crossed the finish line. So for each aha moment that you have, you're going to propel more and more aha moments if you're celebrating those versus if you're not. And so let yourself celebrate it. Let yourself get excited about your progress. Let yourself be happy and like proud of the progress that you've made. And I think you're a beautiful example of this, of like learning that process along this way, because we're not taught that, right? We're not taught that as kids. So here's something else too. I wanted to talk about two other things, Summer, because I'm pretty sure these were pivotal like moments for you, but you can just correct me if I'm wrong. But
Okay.
one of the first instances that I remember with you, and again, correct me if this wasn't you, but I'm 99% sure it was you. You were the one that graded your ex, was it not?
I was, and it's so funny when I heard, because I started following you on Instagram, and when I saw that you made a video on Instagram about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I did this. That's
And
about
there's a
me.
whole podcast on it. And so it's so funny that Summer just couldn't see it in herself, right? Sometimes we can see things, transformation and beautiful things in other people, and we're lacking the ability to turn inwards and see it in ourselves. So, like me just being able to reflect it back to you, that was something you did, right? And I think that that's so profound of recognizing, because you mentioned like, oh, I gave you an aha. Summer, not at all. You had the aha. You did that, right? I got to be a leader and a guider to help you move through that and reflect back to you things that were happening. But that was one of them. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, it's a really good episode. I'll link it in the show notes because I can't remember the title of it right now, but she went through and ended up coming up with like a grading system for her ex that really showed her, wow, my ex is amazing and awesome. But I was also used to just, I think it was like C's and F's or C's and D's or something that I didn't even recognize I didn't have an A or a B, which is a whole other
Mhm.
thing. So then the second thing really goes hand in hand with what she was talking about earlier in our session today in the podcast of having this deep soul level connection. And I remember a specific coaching call with you where we were talking about desire and attachment, I think. And one of the biggest drivers for that, obviously, is when you have that deep, energetic pull, you feel like it's not just oh, this person crosses all these things off my list, but I do genuinely feel like we were meant to be on a soul level and
Yeah,
very connected and deep and energetically, intertwined in even a different dimension, right? I'm
yeah.
on board. I feel like I'm an alien, right? Like I love it. I love all that stuff. And so do you remember that coaching call? Can you relay kind of what happened for you on that coaching call?
Yes, I know exactly which one you're talking about because I had even brought up in that coaching call about the grading system and then struggling with it, even though I had done it, because I was like, well, I'm like, yep, it totally made sense when I graded it. And he was a C. And I was like, and I had always been used to D's and F's. But then I was like, but I'm like, well, here's my heart coming in, or at least that's what I called it. I was like, my heart is coming in and saying like a list can only get you so far, and this deep soul connection is not something you can write down on a list. It's something that is deeply felt, or I feel like it's deeply felt. And I was like, and so that's what I'm struggling with, is that I could maybe find an A or a B on a list, but what if I don't find that soul connection? And you said to me that, what if this is just you scratching the surface on all the different type of energies that are out there? So now that you've been exposed to it, like there's billions of people out there. Like, who's to say that you're not going to find an energetic connection like that that's even better? And so think about it in that way, of that, instead of it just being like, oh, I need to find someone that fits these things on a list, think about like all the different energies you get to explore. So yeah, that was another thing for sure.
Oh, I love it. All the different energies you can explore. I feel like you are some sort, I don't actually even know what you do for a living, but I feel like you're meant to be some sort of energetic healer or like I don't, shaman. Like I just feel like there's some sort of like the natural teacher in you. I'd be curious about what your whole human design chart is, but that's a whole separate conversation. I just feel like
Right?
you've got something going on there. Um, but 100% thinking about all the different energies you get to experience, you've just scratched the surface. And for those of you who love tasks and are very like type A and logical and all those things, but you've had that energetic body experience with somebody, take that and put it on your list and maybe even prioritize it towards the top of your list. Like,
Mhm.
I don't really entertain relationships that don't have that natural energetic connection. Again, you don't have to. If that doesn't feel good for you, don't do it. But if it does feel good for you, try it on, right? Because I think that that is so important. That's so huge. That I mean, my last ex was the first time I had experienced that. I didn't have that with the guy that caused the whole big breakup that created Breakup Coach Dorothy and stuff. But then my ex after that, I very much like that was my first experience of wow, I love connecting with someone on that like soul level. And I didn't realize, that was just the beginning of something that was there's even deeper out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I will even say too that the fact that you mentioned like, try it on and see what works for you. I think that was also something that I realized with breakup school throughout this is that there were a lot of things that would resonate, and then there were other things that I like could not quite like get my mind wrapped around. And so I think that's like a great example of saying, like, try on to see what fits for you. Because I think what I've learned with this too, with this whole process, is that not one person is just going to have all of the answers, right? Like, and you do an amazing job to it, tailoring it to someone's specific, like, personal experience. But I feel like naturally, just in anytime you get advice from anyone, it could be a professional, it could be a friend, it could be a stranger. A lot of the times that advice is going to be on what has worked for them in the past, and that's why they're giving you the advice, because hey, this is what worked for me, like try this on. But I think it's so cool to say try it on, because there might be like things that you could try on. Some might be a little bit tighter, some might be a little bit looser, and then finding what fits for you. I hope this might be okay for me to share this example. And if not, you can totally take this out. But like one of the things, I know I even said this to you at one of like in our one of our coaching sessions. One of the big messages you have throughout your podcast and even in the program is you say, I want you to build your Sunday, and that you're going to be looking for the cherry on top. And I completely understood what the message behind that was. It's saying that you don't want to rely on someone else to build, your bigger and better life. You can build it yourself, that when someone comes in, they're the cherry on top. Now, here's me in my logical mind and getting all crazy, but I was like, well, if everyone thought that way, then we would all be Sundays looking for a cherry, and no one would want to be a cherry because we're all Sundays, right? So then, so my cousin, she actually, I was telling her this exact same thing, and she came up with, I feel like, was the analogy that worked best for me. She's like, what about instead of a sundae, what if you're a banana split? So let's say you're chocolate and your ex was vanilla, right? And you guys were together, you guys tasted good, and you melted together. Well, now vanilla's gone, and you still have a little bit of vanilla melted into you. And that's it, that hurts because vanilla's gone, but you still feel vanilla. She's like, so we just got to put you back in the freezer. We got to harden you up a little bit. And she's like, and then when you get back out there, like chocolate could also taste good with strawberry, chocolate could taste good with vanilla, maybe with cookie dough in it. And she's like, and then when you get together, then you guys can build your toppings on top. And that could really be. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. I love this analogy. This resonates with me now. So, anyway, it's kind of like same message, but looking at it in a different way. And I think that's a great way, or even just like good advice for anyone, is just like, it's okay if something doesn't quite connect, like find something else that might.
Yes, we're keeping that in there. I'm
Okay.
obsessed. I love that. I do truly believe that. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for taking what you think works for you, leaving what doesn't. I actually had a really good example of this because here's the other thing too. I know we're getting a little off topic and more broad here, but I really like this conversation. Something that I find interesting is that as humans, we expect people who have these strong core beliefs to hold on to these strong core beliefs for forever and
Mm-hmm.
only ever think this one thing. when in reality, two things can be true at the same time. I can also completely change my viewpoint on something. And thoughts can be different for different people. And
Mm-hmm.
so the example that happened was someone, I had created a reel recently that was kind of like a motivational breakup pep talk that actually came from a conversation I was having with a dear friend who was really worried about her ex showing up, you know, getting over all of his stuff and showing up with his next girlfriend that was hypothetical in the way that she had wanted him to show up with her this whole time, right? Which, hello, all of us are worried about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Oh yeah.
so in this motivational pep talk on this Instagram reel where I've got like what, 60 seconds to have a conversation with people, um, I had gone on to say kind of what I told my friend of like, he is not going to change his behavior for the next person. I do not believe that. For that specific situation, I do not believe that he's going to change his behavior for the next person. If he does find somebody else, I do believe it will be someone who can easily tolerate poor behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I go on to like kind of hyper up. And I'm like, I just think that your life's about to get a lot easier here. There's so much, going on for you. I think you're going to have a lot lighter of a life without having to like bear all of his stuff right now. And because I was meeting her where she's at and meeting her where she's at. So even if the background of all of that is thoughts create feelings and we can feel indifferent and neutral and we can believe that he may show up, he might not show up for this next person, but it doesn't matter for you because you can stay in your lane. That's not going to meet her where she's at in that moment. And so it's like, we've got to recognize, well, and I say all this because then someone who listens to the podcast comments on this photo saying, I feel like this message contradicts what you say on the podcast because your ex ended up showing up like the person you wanted him to show up with the new person. And she goes on to explain a whole thing. And I'm like, totally. But I
Mm-hmm.
can't explain that in a 60-second reel. And
Right.
right. And I'm sitting here, but I think this message is going to hold so much weight for so many people who are in the depths of that. And I'm not going to hold back that message just because there's other things that I want to teach them, which they could go to the pod. If they listen to the 160-second reel and they love it, they'll go to the podcast and they'll learn a new way of coping with that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so fascinating because I also believe that there's truth in what I was saying. I believe that there's so much truth in what I said in the 60-second reel, which also goes hand in hand with all of the, you know, hundreds of episodes that are 20 minutes long on the podcast. And so I think it goes back to what you're saying of like, take what works for you when it works for you, right?
Yes.
So it's like, and I think one of the other common ones that comes up in the podcast is he did the best that he could. There are some people who listen to that and they're like, okay, I can feel that. I can land with that. And there are some people like, I just can't. Like his best was
Yeah.
so bad though, Dorothy. And it's like, don't take it then. You don't have to take
Mm-hmm.
it. Like if you feel like it would serve you and you like the idea of it, let's explore it. But you don't have to take any of it, right?
Yes, no, I completely agree with that because that is what I ran into with pillar three, with creating closure. As I even said, like in one of the portal check-ins where I was like, I feel like I'm just trying to lie myself through this.
Mhm.
And so because it didn't resonate with me, I went about it in a different way. So I actually personally, and this is just my personal journey with this, I didn't do a funeral for my ex that you have in the program because I was like, I didn't want to force something that didn't feel natural or that wasn't like serving me with the positive energy that I needed, which I knew was intended for that pillar. And I think just going back to exactly what you said is that um, even when you're in like the program, there can be, I mean, like pillar two was like, I was like, I did everything and all of it, and I like loved every single second of it. And then in pillar three, there were things I struggled with. And I do think that one thing is, of course, like when things are hard, push through it. But then there's also the other side where it's like sometimes things may just not quite resonate with you, or maybe you just don't subscribe to it in that exact way. And it's okay. And obviously, like, I still got here, even though I didn't do this one specific task in this exact way, right?
So good. And I think too, that just goes hand in hand with like why I think coaching is so profound is like when Summer had something that didn't land, she didn't just do nothing with it. She like brought it up and was like, this isn't landing for me. What can I move towards or what can I do that's different? I'm open to shifting in whatever way that was. She wasn't just sitting there doing nothing about it. She was just like, this isn't landing with me. So Dorothy, can you help me find something that will? Which is like, I know it sounds so simple, but people sometimes don't do that or don't think to do that, right? And that is the most important thing that you could do is ask for help when something isn't landing.
Well, because you think you're failing, right? I mean, that is the core of it, is that when you're doing something in, especially like in a program, and even when you have other people around you that are super supportive, if there is something that you feel like you're not doing successfully, even when you have cheerleaders, I feel like it's just natural, maybe even especially like for women too, it's like where if you're not doing it the same way as others, then you must be failing. And that was like even truly how I felt, like even just when I did my last check-in, and I was like looking at all of the other Bravehearts in the community, and I was like, wow, this, she got her desire down to zero, and this person got like all of their goals reached. And here I am, like I've hit most of my goals, but not every single one of them. And so therefore, I'm not doing as well. Or, oh, I'm struggling with pillar 3, so there must be something wrong with the way that I'm doing things. And then now being outside of it, and especially having finally like my aha moment, I'm like, no, I was taking what was helping me build to a better, like where I needed to be in my journey. And it wasn't going to be 100% what the program lays out, even though it was like 95%, but it's like, it's like, and I wasn't at the same place that other women are at, but I also think representation is so important. And so I was so blown away and just honored that you even asked me to be on here, because I'm like, here I'm going to come on to this podcast of like getting over your ex. And when I left the program, I quote unquote was like, not quite over him, but I'm like, but I really did have this most amazing relationship I built with myself. I know that keeps sounding so cheesy because I keep repeating it, and I even will probably listen to this back and be like, that is so cringy to say beautiful relationship with yourself. Cause I was just like, thought like a relationship with yourself was just kind of like a, middle finger up to the world, be like, this is who I am, and everyone step out of my way, and I don't give a shit what you think about me type of attitude. And that's not at all what I got. It was more so much acceptance and love, like just knowing exactly like what you said, like I just know that I am deserving. I know I'm a good person. I also know that I can take feedback if I don't do things right, because I'm still human, but that I just know like I'm going to be okay because I now have my back, and no one's going to take that away from me. So yeah.
I have chills from you saying that. Like that last line of like, I now know that I have my back and there's no one that's going to be able to take that away from me. That just sums up what I want to offer to the world. That's
Right?
everything. Yeah, that's everything to me. I think having that kind of relationship with yourself is, eh, again, I keep saying like priceless. I wish there was a better word to say it, but there's nothing more valuable in my mind to have your own back over all of the like trials and tribulations that you have to go through in life because this isn't going to be the last heartbreak that Summer experiences. I don't think it'll be the last time she grieves something. I feel like she's going to go through a lot within her lifetime, but if she has that relationship with herself where she's always going to have her back and know who she is in her bones, I'm not concerned about her ability to go through it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, no, that's exactly it. And just like seeing how it's just come out so naturally, like in its own organic way. Obviously putting a lot of hard work into it, but really taking the time I think to just understand myself, like what what I like, what I don't like, what my communication style is, and even just like to my core, like I can be a very outgoing person, and sometimes I can just be a little bit out there and loud, especially if I have like certain friends that we just hype each other up, and that can be like a lot for someone. And I don't know if you happen to hear about this book. It's Megan Fox's new book where it says Pretty Boys Are Poisonous. Have you
I
read
haven't
that?
read it. I haven't read
Okay.
it. Mm-mm.
It's very small. It's like a little poetry book, but and it really is just like an insight into how someone so gorgeous has been, kind of pushed down so they could be built up, because she's actually just an incredibly smart woman. She has like really great language, like she loves poetry, and so she finally made this like book that really just shows her talent, but then also to be like, this is who I am, but I've always put myself down, or I've, dimmed my own light because I didn't want to have my partner feel less than. And then in turn, all they did was continue to push me down and down and down and down until I was a shell of myself. And not to say that that was at all what happened in my last relationship, but the message itself was that I recognized, like, okay, I know I can be a little much sometimes, which is my natural outgoing personality, but I'm like, I don't want to dim that light. Like that is part of me. And that is like something I actually really love, because not everyone can, or a lot of people do struggle with maybe being a little bit more outgoing in social events. And I'm like, I'm going to look at that as something that I'm happy to have versus something that I should tame. Obviously, knowing there are like obvious situations where you can't just be obnoxious, like, at any point of like the given day, right? But just in an overall sense, being like, I just don't want to lose me in a relationship. And I very much recognize the fact that um, it was me doing that to myself in past relationships, instead of just being able to be comfortable enough to be like, hey, this is who I am. And I hope you love me for it. But if you don't, that's okay. And that's huge, because I always have revolved my life around who I'm dating, or that relationship with them. So much to the point that I thought about this. I was talking to my therapist, where looking back on just all of the things, even throughout this like program, I was like, I think I'm going to make another analogy here. I was like, what I was doing was building a puzzle piece, but I was starting at the corners. And when I would have like one thing I was building, I would get like, frustrated, because it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what this is yet. And then it's like almost like then I would kind of start to build another one, but it almost seemed like I was starting from scratch, right? And that could be just like, yeah, like with the relationship with myself, or even like having new formed like friendships, or confidence, whatever that case is just kind of figuring out what works best for me. But it seems so daunting and so dark because I kept starting at the different corners, which when you can't see the full picture looks like you're almost like starting over, or um, barely getting any pieces together. And so now I'm like, okay, what I was doing, yeah, I built my corners, and now I can see, like, I can see what the picture is supposed to look like, even if it's not fully formed yet. I got my corners down, like my corners are good, and I can see it's a picture of what I want my life to look like. And so now I can piece them together, but not feel so empty, you
I
know?
love that analogy because I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people because think about how many times you yourself or you heard some of your peers slash, cohort going through a scenario where they're like, I got to start at pillar one again because clearly I'm starting. And it's like, no, you guys, you're learning these steps in an order, yes. But these are tools that you're going to like. I need you to have the tools of pillar one of feeling feelings because you're going to be using them throughout the thing. It doesn't mean you have to go back to pillar one. Like, I just want you to do pillar one, have these tools, use them in pillar two, three, and four as needed. But then you're going through pillar two. But pillar two is the other corner, and it might feel like you're starting from scratch over here. Same thing with pillar three. So that makes so much
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Another perfect example. It's the same exact message, right? But it was like,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, the pillars weren't quite working. So then I somehow formed this puzzle that
I love
I'm
it.
creating.
I
So,
love it. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share with anyone who's possibly going through kind of the same situation that you went through? Now that you're kind of through it, what would you say to them?
well, one is I would say that when you're in like the depths, like the deepest part, is to try new things. I mean, you could try all the things that Google tells you, you can try a lot of like Dorothy's lessons, but again, going back to take what works, take what doesn't. I also think it's just really important too that if you are in a situation where your environment is very similar. It's exactly like what you say about Heartbreak Hotel. Like if your environment is very similar, but you can't maybe go on vacation or switch your environment, switch the people up around you. So for instance, like all when I went through my breakup, all of my friends were somehow, we were all like intertwined with like my ex. And it was very difficult to just kind of have that lingering when we would hang out or have like hangout sessions. And so I ended up making a point. I got on Bumble BFF and I started like connecting with new women. And it didn't start out this way, but it actually ended up turning into connecting with other women who were single in their 30s and also going through recent breakups. And I find that that was so helpful for me because it took me out from feeling so isolated and alone in a situation that everyone else was kind of looking in on, oh, poor Summer, to then being able to expand my reach and going through something with other women like local to me that we could build and start connecting on things that we were going through at a very similar stage of life too, right? Because one of them brought up, just as a side note, like where and everyone's journey is like different, so I just want to like preface that because I'm not saying that one thing is worse than the other when you're single. But she brought up this point where she said, it's interesting because like when you are in your 20s, like you're still kind of like the young catch, right? And you're out there and you can go to the bars and you can meet people like easily. And she's like, and then you might have people who are, maybe in their 40s or older, and a lot of them might be getting out of divorces and getting back in the dating field and having that fun again with the fact that they've been out of this like marriage that didn't work. She's like, there's not a lot of light that's shown on women that are like single in their 30s. You're kind of in this weird in between stage. And anyway, I say that because I'm like, I'm not saying that that is 100% truth, of course, by any means, but to just have that feeling when you have other women connected around you that are in that same stage of life, because I very much felt that way, that also helped me too. And so, anyway, going back to my point is that I would say try on all sorts of different things, change up your environment or the people that you're around, expand your reach. Because I think all that's doing is really creating those building blocks or the puzzle edges to create your picture. And then I would say 100% it was worth every single dollar spending on breakup school with you. Because it really gave me the most life-changing thing I could have ever asked for, bigger and better than quote unquote getting over my ex. Like this was a better outcome that I could have ever expected. And I just really cannot thank you enough for even just having this. That gave me the opportunity to see that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's just so much more than getting over your ex, right? Like, there's the piece of even titling this program. I'm going through a lot of internal and external shifts behind the scenes, by the way. So it's fascinating that we're having this conversation as you're saying, as I'm going through shifting a lot of things. And the How to Get Over Your Ex program has always been bigger than just getting over your ex, right? And I love that you call it breakup school. I think that's super fun. Um, Because it's so much more than just getting over your ex or getting over heartbreak or, healing from heartbreak. It's so much more than that. We're building lifelong skills that will be used throughout your entire life in a way where your entire trajectory of your life is changed. Um, and I just appreciate you. Thank you so much for being so transparent and sharing your journey and getting coached when it was hard and vulnerable. It was it was beautiful to witness, and I'm just grateful that I got to be a part of your journey.
Well, thank you. I owe so much to you and really just appreciate everything that you've given me. It really has, exactly like what you said, given me the tools that now I feel like I can walk through life with the wind in my hair type of feeling, knowing that when the negative emotions come up, I'm going to be okay. Like I'm going to be able to handle it. And I just cannot thank you enough for giving me the tools to get there.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Summer. I know everyone listening is going to be so grateful for your time and for your story. I'm so excited for them to go out and change their lives with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.